Hi there, you're listening to the Paralegals on Fire podcast show where you'll be getting tips and actionable strategies that you can use right now to fast track your paralegal career. I'm your host, Ann Pearson, former paralegal and paralegal manager who left big law in the concrete jungle to start my own company, the Paralegal Boot Camp, where we give online courses that help paralegals make more money, increase their job security, and cut out the learning curve. All right, let's jump right into today's episode.
Thanks for joining me today. I think you're going to love this episode. But before I jump into it, I wanted to do a little introduction to it. This was an interview I did a couple years ago as part of a series I was doing to inspire paralegals who weren't quite feeling it, who were maybe questioning whether or not they even wanted to be a paralegal. I'm replaying this episode today for you for a couple of reasons. Number one, I love it, and it is an amazing episode. I think that you'll be truly inspired by it. Number two, I am neck deep in course creation, and it's a big one. I'm going to be doing our RISE paralegal training program, and it's for all new paralegals, not just litigation or personal injury, which I've focused on a lot in the last years, up until, the Bell Blower boot camp and the AI boot camp. But this RISE paralegal training program is essentially for all new paralegals: real estate, corporate, intellectual property, labor and employment, estate planning, everyone. It's something that law firms and paralegals have been asking me for years. And I've finally committed to doing it. But as much as it's something I've been wanting to do for a while, I kept putting it off because of the time that it takes to create a truly engaging course, a course that actually results in something like a new skill. So you might be asking yourself, well, how much time does it take to create an 8-hour course? Wouldn't that just be 8 hours for recording it? No, it's a lot more. And I know that sounds vague, but here's an industry statistic for you. I believe this comes from the Association of Training and Development, ATD or ASTD. Anyways, they said to create 1 hour of interactive, engaging training, it takes approximately 33 hours for each 1 hour segment. Notice I said interactive and engaging. Sure, anyone can hit the record button and put up a PowerPoint full of bullet points and call it training, but that's not what I'm talking about. If you're someone who has taken one of our courses, you know that they're different. So my theory on training is that it has to be something that adds a skill or changes behavior. In most of my courses, I do both. In fact, all of them, I would say, I do both. And in some of them, a third one, which is change a mindset. Anyway, with an 8-hour course, I know that I have to set aside at least 320 hours. This isn't something I can delegate to someone else. Well, except the video editing side of it. But other than that, it has to all be me. And it's the same with the podcast and also putting on live training sessions with law firms. So something had to give. So, like I said in a previous episode, I'm not going to be able to put out weekly podcasts for a while. I'm hoping to have this course launched somewhere in late October, but until then, I may only do monthly podcasts. If I can do more, I promise you I will. Which is what leads me to today's episode. I got thinking about all of the content that I already have out there, 162 episodes worth of content. And in particular, I ran some numbers and I noticed that the interviews don't get nearly as many downloads as the solo episodes, which grabbed my attention because I know that there's so much value in these interviews. And then it hit me. It's because the interviews have titles that just say who I'm interviewing compared to the solo episodes that tell you what the episode is about or what you're going to gain from it. That's why I'm resharing an interview that I did with Lisa Abbey in 2023. She was actually the first interview in a series of what I was calling paralegal inspiration episodes. Because when you hear about Lisa's job and her outlook on her paralegal career, you're going to be inspired. I promise you, you can't listen to this episode and not be inspired to want to find a paralegal job that makes you enjoy it as much as Lisa does. Now, in this episode, she gave lots of advice, so listen to the whole thing. But when I went back and listened to it, I thought, if I was going to give this a title on what her best advice was during the episode, it would be, want to enjoy your paralegal job more? Find your niche. So that's the title of this episode. But that's not her only advice. In fact, if I had a second choice for the title, it was going to be more knowledge equals more value. Or sometimes you just have to kiss a few frogs. So enjoy this episode and know that I'll be back with regular episodes soon. I'm kicking it off with an interview of Lisa Abbey. Lisa started her career in 2005 after working at a hospital for years. She used that medical experience to get her into the medical malpractice area, being a paralegal. And being the smart person that she is, she recognized that she didn't want to pigeonhole herself into one practice area, so she expanded her paralegal career into general civil litigation. In 2016, she went to work as a paralegal specialist in a few different government agencies, and we'll hear about that. And along the way, Lisa also managed to get her master's in forensic psychology and is now in the middle of the dissertation portion of her PhD. And while doing all that, working full-time, she's also an active member in NALA and the American Bar Association and a few other organizations. So, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ann.
All right, and I understand you need to give a little bit of a caveat in terms of what you're saying today and whose opinion it is and your employer and all that.
That's correct. Currently, I work for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. I function as a paralegal specialist, and I just need to throw in the caveat that any opinion that I vocalize during this interview is my opinion. It does not reflect an opinion of the Department of Justice.
Thank you. All right, so let's start out with something that I want to ask of every paralegal out there, but particularly of you, because this inspiration episode is really about being able to motivate others, maybe if they're not in such a great position, and to kind of put a positive spin for a change on things, because we see so much negativity posted in paralegal groups, social media, complaining about things. And I was on a mission. I kept saying to myself, I can't be the only person out there who truly loved being a paralegal. So, Lisa, what do you enjoy most about being a paralegal?
You know, it would be hard for me to keep it down to one thing, but let me say, I love my job. I love the fast-pacedness of my job. Every day is a new learning experience, whether it be a piece of technology that I learned to use, or whether it be functioning as a major component during a federal trial, or being able to find that needle in a haystack when it comes to discovery. I mean, I love my job. I love going to work every day. I work for some of the best attorneys I've ever worked for now. And we've developed a professional relationship over time where they trust me, they value my opinion, and they know they can go to me when they need something.
And you've been doing this for about 17 years, so you're still learning. Every day you're learning new things.
Every day is a new day to learn something new. I mean, I just learned how to use a new piece of software over the past 30 days where I was like, I have the perfect process for doing this. And somebody was like, hey, take a look at this platform. The best thing I could say is if you find a platform, know it inside and out. That's one of the best things I could say that make my life easier is I am always open to new suggestions to accomplish a task more efficiently. And everything moving into a technology environment, it's only to your benefit to learn those platforms that are utilized inside and out. It makes you more marketable and it makes your job a lot easier.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I've probably said it a few times on this podcast. I tell them to be the masters of technology for their practice area. And my advice to all new paralegals, I'm going to say it again for those who haven't heard it yet, is that you should know
more about the technology in your practice area than any attorney on the team, so that you're the go-to person. Would you agree that?
Absolutely, 100%. I am the go-to person when it comes to majority of the platforms and working with my attorneys. Adobe is huge. Everything gets submitted via Adobe. And it would be to anybody and everybody's benefit to learn how to use all of the tools and all the accessories that go along with Adobe. All court filings are done in Adobe.
I agree. So you said that you thoroughly enjoy what you're doing, and it sounds like you have a great job. You probably work for some great people. So has it always been like that? You've been doing it 17 years now. Have all the jobs been just as great as this one?
Oh gosh, no. We have all been there working for a less than pleasant supervisor. It doesn't matter what field you're in. There's always that one job where you're like, oh, I need to find something new. And I have come a long way from 2005 to 2022. For me, there always was something new to be learned. When I go back to 2005 and, I was learning how to do discovery, and there was always a positive takeaway for me. I learned something new. I never left a job thinking, oh, this was terrible. And, it was a waste of my time, or, this was like a year I couldn't get back in life. I always found something positive to take away from a job, whether it was a skill or a connection or finding information out about different organizations they cater towards paralegals. You should always look for some positive. You're not always not everything is going to be sunshine and roses, but you should always try to look for something positive as a takeaway when you transition from one job to another.
I agree. That's good advice. I didn't think about it like that before. Everything has a positive spin. I guess even the paralegals, I've read some posts, they're working for what they call jerk attorneys, and they're not making much money. They're mean to them, but maybe the positive lesson is it's toughening up your skin, because I think we all could use a little bit tougher skin when it comes to working with attorneys, right?
Absolutely. And I will tell you that rolled over into my academia as well, because when you decide to go for those upper degrees and your professor comes back and just destroys your paper, you have to have that thick skin. So it goes both ways. And, we've all worked for that one attorney where you're like, there's so much red on my paper, I can't even see what it is I put on this paper.
Well, along those lines, tell me a little bit about what a typical day. Well, first of all, I know there's no such thing as a typical day for any paralegal, but can you give me an idea of some of the things that you're doing on a regular basis? Obviously, generally speaking, and maybe how that's either the same or different than when you were a paralegal working in a law firm?
I mean, a lot of the tasks involved, they kind of cross over. I mean, when you're in a private law firm and you want to file a complaint, everything starts with the initial investigation. So you do the interview and you find out, okay, this is a legitimate problem, and you draft a complaint. Well, in the federal government, you would receive information. Someone would inquire whether something is a practice that needs to be investigated. And in the federal government, especially criminal, it starts with an indictment. So I deal with indictments a lot, where basically their peers are deciding whether or not charges should be brought against an individual. So that process is the same. One of the things I do want to touch on is discovery. Discovery is so huge in a paralegal's day-to-day job. I have never seen a paralegal tell me, oh, I only have 1 to 2 cases, because that's just unheard of. There are times where I would have up to 50 active cases, and every case, if it wasn't in trial, we were in the discovery phase, which is long. It takes a lot of time to, 1, subpoena the records, 2, to go through and scrutinize the records. And with discovery, I'm just going back to talking about the different platforms as far as IT goes, that is just such a huge portion of my day. Now, there are other things. I mean, I correspond with the district court. I correspond with outside counsel. I might correspond with different agencies, but discovery takes up the largest part of my time. And for me, I enjoy it so much because I view it as finding that needle in a haystack. when you're putting something together and you have that aha moment. And I'm like, aha, I found it. Aha, I know what the problem is now. And that is the most rewarding part for me in my day-to-day activity. We all have certain mundane tasks we need to do. If anybody listening dates back to when we were manually bait stamping something with a stamp, or we had to print out all those little stickers to put on the bottoms of documents. Now it's a lot faster. I mean, you have different platforms that could do it, like Relativity or Everlaw, or even if you want to use Adobe, and it's like you snap your fingers and the task is done. But we all have those mundane tasks that we just dread doing. But that's not my primary focus when I go in. My primary focus is, you know what, let me get through this mundane task so I could go to the meat and potatoes of what it is I need to accomplish for the day.
Well, how did you get to the point that you were trusted to work at that level? We all have mundane tasks. And in fact, I remember the red ink stains on the sides of my hands and the lesson you learn early on in your career, like, oh, don't wear that white silk blouse on days when you're going to be bait stamping. But did you have to do anything in particular to get to the level where your attorneys trusted you and respected you enough to have you doing that level of work?
Speaking personally for myself, for me, it was all about educating myself. And I'm not talking about necessarily like a college degree, because there are a lot of educational opportunities for paralegals to learn new things. So when you're in an office meeting and, they're having a discussion and you're like, hey, you know what? I found a way to do this. And for me, I'm like a giant sponge. If there is information or knowledge that I can gain along the way, that's what makes them trust me and they value my opinion. And I read a lot, not just for school, but like you had mentioned, I am active member of the American Bar Association. Well, they put out publications all the time. NALA puts out tons of information for paralegals as far as training and, take as much training as you possibly can. And some of it is free. Not all of it costs money. And just learn as much as you possibly can. I feel like sometimes I am a subject matter expert in the minutia of a lot of areas. So I touch on a lot of different things and then I just expand that knowledge as I go. Don't sell yourself short. There's always something new to be learned, and you could reach out to a lot of different organizations or even through volunteering and just learn different things. And the more information and knowledge that you can bring to the table, the more value your attorneys will see in you. If you just are I hate to use the term yes person, but I'm going to use it in this case. If you are just a yes person, like somebody gives you a task and you're like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, you're not really adding any value. It's the minute that you say, hey, you know what? I learned this something new and let me show you how this was going to make this so much better. And for me, it was gain as much knowledge as I can along the way. And 17 years is you gain a lot of knowledge in 17 years.
Yeah, especially if you're doing what you're doing, right? And reading and keeping up with your education and all that. I think I heard at some point, I'll have to see if I can find the quote, but something about the top 1% or the most successful people read X amount of words every single day or week, month, in numbers of books, and they do it to expand their knowledge, not because they're being told to.
I agree with that 100%. I actually, and this is not a pitch for anything, but I saw a book on one of the websites for one of the organizations I belong to, and it had to do with legal practices in cybersecurity. And I was like, hey, this is interesting. And I know I deal with a little bit of cybersecurity, but I'm like, it's only going to be to my benefit to read this. I'll have a greater understanding for this. And be a giant sponge. That's all I can say is gain as much knowledge along the way as you can, whether it be through a periodical, a peer-reviewed journal, a book, a podcast, a webinar, whatever you can do. And they're easy to find. You can do an easy search and find something.
Well, so before we hit the record button, one of the things that I liked when I talked to you first was how you spoke of your employer, the attorneys you work for, how they respect you there. Can you give me a little idea, like how do you know you're getting the respect you deserve? Did you have to ask for it?
One of the biggest things for me, and it's so little, but it means a lot, is when I see that email come through and say, hey, I'm looping in Lisa on this one. I know right then and there, they're looping me in because they know I know the answer. And I mean, it's a small gesture, but it's huge when I see that. And I probably get those emails 3 to 4 times a day.
For the people who are out there listening today who are maybe not in a position that they enjoy as much as you, or maybe just not making as much money, whatever it is, they're just disenchanted or not satisfied with the paralegal profession, what advice can you give them?
Find your niche. You got into this position for a specific reason, and the legal practice is huge. I mean, there are real estate, landlord, tenant, tax law, class action. I mean, there are tons of different areas. Find your niche. Find something that you are passionate about and go for it. And then just keep going. That's the best advice I could give, is find something that you are passionate about, find your passion and go for it.
That's great advice. Yeah, because if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to enjoy your job. And then that's going to show in your work product and your work ethic and all of that.
Absolutely. And you know what? A facial expression is like wearing a badge on your sleeve, and silence is, you get a lot from just looking at people's facial expressions. So
boy, we could have a whole other episode, I'll bet you, with the stuff that I forgot about your psychology.
absolutely.
I'm glad we're not on video right now. No, I'm kidding. All right. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being our first 2023 Paralegal Inspiration episode. I hope that we have inspired people, and I am so happy to talk to people like you who are out there in positions that they enjoy, that respect them, and that you're enjoying your paralegal career. So thank you.
And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and reaching out to me. And I enjoyed it. I always go back to, I wish I knew then what I know now. And I hope that's a message that I can deliver to some of the other paralegals who are starting, or they feel stuck, or I just hope I can add some value.
Oh, you did, I'm sure. And even if there's just one paralegal listening right now who's in a position and thinking, maybe I don't want to be a paralegal anymore. If she or he hears some of what you've had to say and they decide, maybe I just need to find my niche.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks again, Lisa. I'll talk with you soon.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye.
All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, hit the subscribe button in whatever platform you're listening. And please take a quick minute and leave a review of the podcast, and share this episode with just one colleague or friend who you think would benefit from what we discussed today. Share the knowledge, and the entire paralegal profession elevates. See you next week. Bye for now.